We're spending the show airing excerpts of the Donald Trump-Hillary Clinton presidential debate at Washington University in St. Louis, giving Green Party presidential candidate Jill Stein a chance to respond to the same questions posed to the major party candidates. Stein and Libertarian presidential candidate Gary Johnson were excluded from the debate under stringent rules set by the Commission on Presidential Debates, which is controlled by the Democratic and Republican parties. We invited both Stein and Johnson to join us, only Stein took us up on the offer. We thought we'd, well, bring you what democracy sounds like, what it looks like. As we go back now to debate moderator Anderson Cooper of CNN.
Thank you, Mr. Trump. The question from Patrice was about, are you both modeling positive and appropriate behaviors for today's youth? We received a lot of questions online, Mr. Trump, about the tape that was released on Friday. As you can imagine, you called what you said locker room banter. You described kissing women without consent, grabbing their genitals. That is sexual assault. You bragged that you have sexually assaulted women. Do you understand that?
No, I didn't say that at all. I don't think you understood what was said. This was locker room talk. I'm not proud of it. I apologize to my family. I apologize to the American people. Certainly I'm not proud of it. But this is locker room talk. You know, when we have a world where you have ISIS chopping off heads, where you have, and frankly, drowning people in steel cages, where you have wars and horrible, horrible sights all over, where you have so many bad things happening. This is like medieval times. We haven't seen anything like this, the carnage all over the world. And they look and they see. Can you imagine the people that are, frankly, doing so well against us with ISIS? And they look at our country and they see what's going on. Yes, I'm very embarrassed by it. I hate it. But it's locker room talk, and it's one of those things. I will knock the hell out of ISIS. We're going to defeat ISIS. ISIS happened a number of years ago in a vacuum that was left because of bad judgment. And I will tell you, I will take care of ISIS. So, Mr. Trump, we should get on to much more important things and much bigger things.
Just for the record, though, are you saying that what you said on that bus 11 years ago, that you did not actually kiss women without consent or grope women without consent?
I have great respect for women. Nobody has more respect for women than I do.
So for the record, you're saying you never did that?
I said things that, frankly, you hear these things are said. And I was embarrassed by it, but I have tremendous respect for women.
Have you ever done those things?
Women have respect for me. And I will tell you, no, I have not. And I will tell you that I'm going to make our country safe. We're going to have borders in our country, which we don't have now. People are pouring into our country, and they're coming in from the Middle East and other places. We're going to make America safe again. We're going to make America great again, but we're going to make America safe again. And we're going to make America wealthy again, because if you don't do that, it sounds harsh to say, but we have to build up the wealth of our nation. Right now, other nations are taking our jobs and they're taking our wealth.
Thank you, Mr. Trump.
And that's what I want to talk about.
Secretary Clinton, do you want to respond?
Well, like everyone else, I've spent a lot of time thinking over the last 48 hours about what we heard and saw. You know, with prior Republican nominees for president, I disagreed with them on politics, policies, principles, but I never questioned their fitness to serve. Donald Trump is different. I said starting back in June that he was not fit to be president and commander-in-chief. And many Republicans and independents have said the same thing. What we all saw and heard on Friday was Donald talking about women, what he thinks about women, what he does to women. And he has said that the video doesn't represent who he is, but I think it's clear to anyone who heard it that it represents exactly who he is, because we've seen this throughout the campaign. We have seen him insult women. We've seen him rate women on their appearance, ranking them from 1 to 10. We've seen him embarrass women on TV and on Twitter. We saw him after the first debate spend nearly a week denigrating a former Miss Universe in the harshest, most personal terms. So, yes, this is who Donald Trump is. But it's not only women, and it's not only this video that raises questions about his fitness to be our president. because he has also targeted immigrants, African Americans, Latinos, people with disabilities, POWs, Muslims, and so many others. So this is who Donald Trump is. And the question for us, the question our country must answer, is that this is not who we are. That's why, to go back to your question, I want to send a message, we all should, to every boy and girl, and indeed to the entire world, that America already is great, but we are great because we are good. And we will respect one another, and we will work with one another, and we will celebrate our diversity. These are very important values to me, because this is the America that I know and love. And I can pledge to you tonight that this is the America that I will serve if I'm so fortunate enough to become your president.
And we want to get to some questions
Well, am I
from
allowed
online.
to respond to that? I assume I am.
Yes, you can respond to that.
It's just words, folks. It's just words. Those words, I've been hearing them for many years. I heard them when they were running for the Senate in New York, where Hillary was going to bring back jobs to upstate New York, and she failed. I've heard them where Hillary is constantly talking about the inner cities of our country, which are a disaster, education-wise, job-wise, safety-wise, in every way possible. I'm going to help the African Americans. I'm going to help the Latinos, Hispanics. I am going to help the inner cities. She's done a terrible job for the African Americans. She wants their vote, and she does nothing, and then she comes back 4 years later. We saw that firsthand when she was a United States Senator. She campaigned where the primary part of her campaign.
I want to get to audience questions and online questions.
So she's allowed to do that, but I'm not allowed to respond.
You're going to get to respond right now.
Green Party presidential nominee Jill Stein, you have 2 minutes to respond.
So the question, is whether we candidates are modeling behavior that is appropriate for our children to emulate. And I agree in the strongest terms that Donald Trump's abusive behavior and abusive language towards women and everybody else is shameful and despicable and a terrible thing for our children and the rest of society to witness. Sexual violence towards women is not a trivial matter. 1 out of 6 women is a victim of sexual violence. 3 women a day are killed by domestic violence. So this issue cannot be overemphasized as a really critical concern for all of us. At the same time, it's very important that we not lose sight, not allow this despicable incident here to overshadow the other issues that are very much at stake. Let's just look, for example, at the condition of our youth and our younger generation. Not only the sky-high rates of unemployment they're facing, the incredible skyrocketing of the costs of college education, the fact that 43 million young people are locked into predatory student loan debt with no way out in the economy as it exists, with low-wage, part-time, temporary jobs having, become available since the Wall Street crash. That recovery is pretty much limited to the upper 5 to 10%. A few little, changes around the margins, but this hasn't been a recovery for everyday people. My campaign is the only one that is speaking to the climate crisis falling on the shoulders of young people. The only campaign that is speaking to the endless wars that are making us less secure and that are bankrupting our budget. And the only candidate that will bail out young people the way Barack Obama and Democrats and Republicans in Congress bailed out Wall Street to the tune of $16 trillion. It's about time for us to bail out the victims of Wall Street, the younger generation who is trapped in predatory student loan debt. And I just want to encourage people to go to my website, jill2016.com, to be a part of this movement. The numbers are there. 43 million young people are locked into debt. That is a winning plurality of the vote. If that word were to get out, this election could be turned on its head. There is a voter revolt, which is actually in full swing right now. And you can see that the corporate media is working overtime to try to do a blackout on our campaign, which is the real threat to this politics as usual that is throwing us under the bus.
So
Thank you.
Let's go back to debate moderator Martha Raddatz of ABC.
This next question comes from the public through the Bipartisan Open Debate Coalition's online forum, where Americans submitted questions that generated millions of votes. This question involves Wikileaks' release of purported excerpts of Secretary Clinton's paid speeches, which she has refused to release, and one line in particular in which you, Secretary Clinton, purportedly say you need both a public and private position on certain issues. So, two from Virginia asks, is it okay for politicians to be two-faced? Is it acceptable for a politician to have a private stance on issues? Secretary Clinton, well, your 2 minutes.
Right. As I recall, that was something I said about Abraham Lincoln after having seen the wonderful Steven Spielberg movie called Lincoln. It was a master class watching President Lincoln get the Congress to approve the 13th Amendment. It was principled and it was strategic. And I was making the point that it is hard sometimes to get the Congress to do what you want to do, and you have to keep working at it. And yes, President Lincoln was trying to convince some people. He used some arguments. Convincing other people, he used other arguments. That was a great, I thought, a great display of presidential leadership. But, you know, let's talk about what's really going on here, Martha, because our intelligence community just came out and said in the last few days that the Kremlin, meaning Putin and the Russian government, are directing the attacks, the hacking on American accounts to influence our election. And Wikileaks is part of that, as are other sites where the Russians hack information. We don't even know if it's accurate information, and then they put it out. We have never in the history of our country been in a situation where an adversary, a foreign power, is working so hard to influence the outcome of the election. And believe me, they're not doing it to get me elected. They're doing it to try to influence the election for Donald Trump. Now, maybe because he has praised Putin, maybe because he says he agrees with a lot of what Putin wants to do, maybe because he wants to do business in Moscow. I don't know the reasons. But we deserve answers. And we should demand that Donald release all of his tax returns so that people can see what are the entanglements and the financial relationships
we're going to get to that later.
That he has
Secretary
with
Clinton,
Russians and
you're
other
out of time.
foreign powers.
Well, I think I should
Mr.
respond
Trump.
because it's so ridiculous. Look, now she's blaming, she got caught in a total lie. Her papers went out to all her friends at the banks, Goldman Sachs and everybody else, and she said things, WikiLeaks, that just came out, and she lied. Now she's blaming the lie on the late, great Abraham Lincoln. That's one that I haven't. Okay, Honest Abe never lied. That's the good thing. That's the big difference between Abraham Lincoln and you. That's a big, big difference. We're talking about some difference. But as far as other elements of what she was saying, I don't know Putin. I think it would be great if we got along with Russia because we could fight ISIS together, as an example, but I don't know Putin. But I notice anytime anything wrong happens, they like to say, the Russians. She doesn't know if it's the Russians doing the hacking. Maybe there is no hacking. But they always blame Russia. And the reason they blame Russia is because they think they're trying to tarnish me with Russia. I know nothing about Russia. I know about Russia, but I know nothing about the inner workings of Russia. I don't deal there. I have no businesses there. I have no loans from Russia. I have a very, very great balance sheet, so great that when I did the old post office on Pennsylvania Avenue, the United States government, because of my balance sheet, which they actually know very well, chose me to do the old post office between the White House and Congress, chose me to do the old post office. One of the primary things, in fact, perhaps the primary thing, was balance sheet. But I have no loans with Russia. You could go to the United States government and they would probably tell you that, because they know my sheet very well in order to get that development I had to have. Now, the taxes are a very simple thing. As soon as I have, first of all, I pay hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes. Many of her friends took bigger deductions. Warren Buffett took a massive deduction. Soros, who's a friend of hers, took a massive deduction. Many of the people that are giving her all this money that she can do many more commercials than me took massive deductions. I pay hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes. But as soon as my routine audit's finished, I'll release my returns. I'll be very proud to.
Green Party presidential nominee Jill Stein, your response.
So, on this issue of Hillary's statement about the public views versus the private views, that's certainly borne out by her history, where, her public statement is that she is the friend to women and children, but in fact, privately, and her actual track record is to dismantle aid to families with dependent children, to have supported NAFTA and the offshoring of our jobs, to support the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And now she says she's against it, but her director of transition, Ken Salazar, is a big booster, as is her VP candidate. So, which is it? In Haiti, as Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton led the charge to push down the abysmal poverty wages of the Haitian people from 60 cents an hour down to a shocking 40 cents an hour, so as to boost the profits of the American corporation. So, and on Black Lives Matter, there is lip service to the cause of racial justice, but the Democratic Party official position, revealed again in some leaked emails, was that pat them on the head, meet with them, but don't make any concessions to them. Do not give them any ground. Do not, in other words, acknowledge what a crisis situation this is, where African Americans are at risk driving in their cars down the street from police violence. So this is a real problem, and it goes hand in hand with another statement that was just released, where Hillary said that she doesn't have much contact with the people because of the economic fortunes that she and her husband have enjoyed. In blaming this on Abraham Lincoln, or blaming her statement on Abraham Lincoln, it's noteworthy that Abraham Lincoln was a third-party candidate, and that in times of great social upheaval, third parties occasionally prevail. And for so many people, the issue here is the politics of fear, and the greater fear of Donald Trump that overrides everything else, including Hillary Clinton's record creating the economic misery leading to the rise of Donald Trump. So I just want to underscore for people to remember what happened under Richard Nixon, one of the most terrible, regressive, oppressive presidents we've ever had, where we had the courage of our convictions. And under this terrible president, we achieved bringing the troops home from Vietnam, women's right to choose, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, protections for workers in the workplace, because we, the people, were standing up and leading the charge towards the kinds of policies that we actually deserve. It's important for us to lead with the politics of courage. The politics of fear, unfortunately, has delivered everything we were afraid of.
Green Party presidential nominee Jill Stein, after a short break.